Let's see if I can stress some things straight tonight.
Bitchin' out a star, looking corny in your muscle car. Got a muscle shirt on, but you're looking like a tub of lard. Faking your muscles by a dirty yard. Better put a muzzle, you keep blowing hard. Lying in your hustle, but a corny R.
Pull the hammer on a scammer, Alec Baldwin. Bitch, you killed the vibe, everybody's lolling. Trying really hard, but you're never rolling. Now you're 45 and you're always crawling. Better take a dive, cause I'm always all in. Ready for the night, cause I'm always on it. Always on it, always on it, always on it. You're leaving this in the hearse. Your bald head forever be cursed. You snitch like a fed, you get burst. On Twitter, another outburst. You told them you jumped and you suck. Rip, you'll do anything for a buck. Fake, everyone knows you're a cock. You got a micro when you talk. Bitch, you're not a star. Bitch, you're not a star. Got mad Twitter fingers, but a fucking bitch in person. Needs a little girl to nurse him. Never upgrade to a better version. He down bad, bitter like a bad version. I'm Tarzan, Louis Batman with a bad plan, deadpan. Never tank clan, weep with a trash band. And can, I'm a caveman like a past land. Never an ass can, and I'm gassing, never masking. This motherfucker tried to send me to Azkaban, but I rose another level with a master plan. Never see the hate, cause I'm fast and bad. All of that bad man, living them in the dust panic. That man in them like a Wu-Tang. Newsmen hounding them with the gas man, but I've been sent to this world to bull-faced the clan.
Shout out to Def Noodles for the sick intro tonight, guys. As you can see, I actually put my camera... the chat is in the wrong spot. Alright, I'll have to set it up another time. I set up some special things the other day, specifically to do streams like this that I wasn't planning on actually doing, but I figured it'd be nice to have it just in case I ever decided to do a more specifically target or topical stream. Tonight, here's essentially what the plan is. Shatter it all. Okay? Yeah, I might be learning a little too much from Salvo. Anyway, I actually did stream prep, which I usually don't do because I go online as much as Def Noodles wants to pretend he wants to. I actually do go online to goof on things. I have a little bit of what I call integrity, however, where I insist that I try not to get the story wrong. And there's been a million videos from the community, myself, Nick Diorio, Kavos, and many others, highlighting what's wrong with Def Noodles' idea of comedy. So tonight, what we're going to do, we're going to start at the beginning and very quickly, briefly go through some things we need to establish before we get to the current day lore, alright? Let's see, who we got in chat? We got Huggy Bear, Kristen Ark, and Mortal Wake. Thank you. Thank you. I'm hoping to get an actual, like, stream intro, because I like the way this works so far. So, here we go. Oh, now Teddy's here. So, the first thing I want to start with is according to Def Noodles, okay? In a Twitter space he did yesterday, this that I'm showing on screen right here, this tweet from him that he tweeted on the 30th, is a podcast that was done before any drama with anybody started. For anyone interested, I speak about my work long before any of this BS and the satirical parody and parody aspects of it on this comedy podcast, one of the best comedy podcasts in the country. I don't know where he's getting the information that it's one of the best in the country. I've only heard of it because of Def Noodles, and I literally listen to podcasts, comedy podcasts, all day at work. Never heard of this one, and every one I've listened to because of this podcast was like a analyzing podcasts, an analyzing comedy kind of podcast. And if you listen to this entire podcast, you won't really hear hardly any jokes, which is interesting for a comedy podcast where they don't make jokes. Right? Interesting. Anyway, he claims it's from 2019. This is from March 2021, 2 years after he claims it was. Now, this is important because he claims he laid out everything in this podcast that he never really shouted out in 2019 when it supposedly happened, before all the drama where he explains everything. All of my lore is explained here. Everyone should understand it's a bit. It's comedy. Everyone should understand it's for the ha-has. But it's not. We all know that it's a farce. So, anyway, I'm going to reference my video because, as far as I know, I'm the only one that actually really covered this podcast in their videos. And I want to listen to, it's just a few minutes. Let's see, it's what, 5 to 10 minutes, something like that. We'll listen to a couple minutes of it. Because it actually defeats some of his arguments later down the road that he claims this podcast establishes clearly and fixes a lot of the problems we have with him. Not the smearing people he's had disagreements with, none of that. They're just jokes with a little bit of truth to them, right, Dennis? Now, just so we're 100% clear, Dennis did also put up this video around the same time saying that he was dealing with a lot of copyright issues on his channel. He was worried about losing his channel or not being able to continue. I believe he mentioned something about his Twitter being suspended as well, but he doesn't say that this is what made him want to quit. He says it was Kavos. I don't know, man. The cat seems sus. So now that we've spent 35 minutes going over the same stories everybody else has talked about, let's talk about something that hardly anyone has touched on at all, the Vulture interview he did for the podcast, Good One. The podcast starts off with a very interesting intro from the host of the show. To simplify things, I'm going to paraphrase what the host said, basically describing himself as a normie that's not into the YouTube community and all that. He doesn't understand that community and that culture.
See, Def Noodles is a character, supposedly, in the style of the Colbert Report era Stephen Colbert. But my experience diving down the rabbit hole of his work, the backlash to it is the weirdest thing I've ever consumed. It reminds
The backlash is the weirdest thing he's ever consumed. The backlash to Def Noodles is the weirdest thing he's ever consumed. However,
me less of Colbert and more of Andy Kaufman. It's not always clear which part is real and which part is a joke and what the joke even is sometimes. As much as he says it's all a character, I don't know if I always believe him. You know, he
then lays out why we have a problem with him. So the host doesn't seem to be very smart. To begin with.
He clearly gets something out of reporting in his way about this world. Even after talking to Dennis, my producers and I were unsure which parts were real and which weren't.
He doesn't understand the backlash to Dennis, while also saying that I just said what I say in the video. Understand when he's being real and when he's making a joke or what the joke is. So he gets the problem we have, but he doesn't understand why we have it. But I think by the end of this podcast, Dennis gives us a couple of great examples of why he's not to be trusted.
What do you think of this content? What is your point you're trying to make about this world?
It goes along with like the title of the series, the most banal and irrelevant stories that anybody could be talking about. A lot of
says the guy covering COVID parties and serious allegations.
the times it's just presented with like such seriousness and people take it so seriously, right? You read the comments on TikTok Room or on Drama Alert or even on Perez Hilton's page, like, oh, so-and-so, like, had a cup of coffee today, and like people are like, well, no, how? Why would they even never do that? You know, like.
Yes, I'm sure everybody here remembers Coffeegate, and he's totally not downplaying what he talks about on his channel. Despite the fact that he had already been reporting about COVID parties for months, but on top of that, around the time this podcast started, he had already started doing videos about the David Dobrik situation.
I'm making fun of outrage culture and basically how these non-stories are presented and framed in this way that ends up generating all this outrage. It's a commentary on, social media news sphere that kind of fuels so much of this outrage. A lot of context is lost on social media. And usually the more context is lost, the more, I guess, captivating and the more outrage.
Which is why so much of your career is taking things out of context. Because you're trying to make a point about things being taken out of context. So you take things out of context to make people look bad and destroy people's careers. Okay.
Something generates. It's so easy to just flatten something to the most basest thing and just appeal to emotion, right? And completely remove all the humanity from it.
A lot of commentators like to throw around the word hypocrite like it's some kind of cure-all argument, the magic argument that makes every one of their enemies go away. But nuance matters when it comes to hypocrisy, and I think it's relevant here. In almost every situation I've talked about in this video, Dennis removed the nuance from the situation, flattening it down to its most surface level, and then used a buzzword to appeal to human emotion. Now, I'm sure presented with this information, Dennis would say, well, it was my satire. satire. I was satirizing the community by doing that to them. That's the whole point of it. But at the same time, when he was out of character talking to Augie on his live stream, he still defended the action. So Dennis, who has a rather large platform he's used dishonestly to spread misinformation about and slander fellow creators, is also trying to use his platform to teach people about those exact things. Watch him dox somebody next and then claim, well, I did it to teach everybody a lesson about how doxing is bad.
What's going to happen once you level the playing field for all opinions? Everybody should have the right to have an opinion, but what if somebody has tens of millions of followers, but they have the worst opinions?
The concept your show is supposedly built around. Okay.
You know what I mean? That are just gonna disenfranchise people and just push people away, but it's viable. You know what I mean? So that's one of the dangers that I see with this whole situation, and I think that's the awareness that I'm trying to bring as like on the macro level. You gotta be careful, with what you say. Like social media platforms don't really like educate people who are building audiences on their platforms with the dangers of like misleading their audiences. Not even in like misleading them with fake news, but leading them down like certain paths, right? Of like thought, right? There are a lot of people who have 20,000 followers. I mean, I don't think they realize just the amount of influence they can have on those 20,000. And if each one of those 20,000 gets the ideas and passes it on to 2 people, that's like growing exponentially. I just think that we have to have more awareness of what our conversations are and how we're shaping conversations.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there, Dennis. I think you need to be a lot more careful with how you use your platform, who you talk about, and how you talk about them.
I posted this Rodney Dangerfield quote, and it got completely taken out of context.
Dennis, I'm starting to think you don't know what the word context means. You said, I get no respect on Twitter. There was no context. That's it. And before you start saying that he put the context in a reply to this tweet, yeah, he did that like 8 hours later after the block people already got screenshots of him saying, I get no respect with no context. You can't take out of context what doesn't have context. Now, this full-length podcast is just full of bad faith representations and more misinformation. I could have probably made a whole second. So, I feel like that pretty much summarized enough of the hour and a half podcast. And I feel like I've already established, I feel like anybody that's been following this, by the way, welcome to Red Hood Assassin. Thank you, Huggy Bear, for resubbing. But I feel like I've already established, in this video, based on his podcast, that he is contradicting his actions in this podcast, and he acts like he's trying to educate people by doing the same thing. Like, okay, so what's next? You gonna start war with like Japan to teach people how war is bad? Are you gonna go out there and like beat somebody up to teach them about why assault is wrong? Like what? You've actually like slandered people. You've tried to ruin people's reputations because you don't like them. Like you've gone after people for implying things about people, but yourself have implied far worse about Papa Gut. Def Noodles was banned from Twitter in July 2021. Okay? Now, we didn't really know. It was speculated as to why. But it was because he was tweeting about a sexual assault allegation. Which is a little bit funny, given, like, the whole thing is, every single time, it's about him blowing something up into some big thing, but it's not hyperbole, he's dead serious about it. Now, let me see, where was I at here? He got banned from Twitter and couldn't spam Peter's Twitter feeds with weird attempts at owning people and things like that. He was blocking everybody like crazy back then, trying to avoid any conversation as much as possible. Just trying to isolate himself from other people. Now he's trying to use other people to grow his audience in the exact opposite direction. He's trying to get the haters to grow an audience for him, basically by like forcing contrarianship or whatever. Now, he got his Twitter back recently. Okay, but at the time, because he lost his Twitter and his whole presence was between putting up a video or two a day where he was covering this wide variety of stories. Some of them were lighthearted and he could goof on them easily. Other ones were ones that he supposedly cares deeply about, things like COVID parties and sexual assault. Well, he was tweeting about them like crazy, just like everything else he talks about. The same way, with the same cadence and the same coverage. There's been a couple times where he'll like change a little bit of his tone will change, but he carries on the same type of jokes and all that. But on Twitter especially, the place that most people had most of the problem with him, he continued to double and triple down until he got banned. And unfortunately for him, that's when his relevance started to drop. Because all of a sudden now he's not on Twitter, constantly engaging, constantly pushing the information, constantly pushing a narrative, and his channel wasn't enough to sustain it. So it slowly kind of crawled along. There was a lot of drop off, a lot of increase as well, depending on the time you're looking at. As you can see here, from the point of time that we were going back and forth with him, right around then, it started in like December, November, and it slowly was going down. And then right here, he got a spike in August of 2021. I'm not sure what happened in August of 2021. I believe that's when there was something he covered. There was like one thing he covered or something that kind of recovered him a decent number of subscribers, or he collabed with somebody or something. But then immediately started dropping again, right? He also deleted some videos, and I don't remember why that was. I don't remember if anybody ever talked about that, because it was 2020. Oh, you think it was the Keem spat? It's also very possible. It's very, very possible that it was a Keem spat. Now, speaking of Keem, for the next year after his ban, he constantly accused Keem of going behind the scenes to Twitter contacts to get him banned from Twitter. Podcasts where he was obsessing over Keem. There was a podcast where he actually talking to his therapist about how bad Keem is, and supposedly the therapist, and this makes zero sense to me, supposedly this professional therapist, something along the lines, according to Def Noodles, of he sounds like a sociopath. Something like that, or a massive narcissist, something. He applied a term, according to Def Noodles, his professional therapist weighed in on internet drama and gave a term to Keem based on information he had no information on besides what Def Noodles said to him in his emotional spat. But he went on for months accusing Keem of getting him deplatformed from Twitter. And then we found out that it was actually because he tweeted about, I can't remember, there was a female actress that was underage and dating somebody who was 21 or something like that. And he was tweeting stuff about that. And that's what ended up getting him banned. It had nothing to do, I think it was Millie Bobby Brown of Stranger Things. I believe that was the story that he was covering. And that's apparently what got him banned from Twitter. But he continued to blame Keem, and then afterwards when he comes back, he still tries to justify, Keem's a bad guy, so he deserved being called that. Now, the only big collaboration I'm aware of that Def Noodles has had was January 28th. He got to co-host an episode of the H3 podcast, and he may have been a guest on an episode prior, for a situation that happened. I'm not quite sure. I don't follow the H3 podcast anymore. I really kind of can't stand the H3 team anymore. At one point I enjoyed it. I have a video about my issues with them as well. Now, I don't know exactly where the story begins with Papa Gut and Def Noodles. All I know is that Def Noodles and Papa Gut had a debate, if you will. What was it? Where is it? There was a debate he had with him a few months ago, 6-7 months ago or something like that, I believe, is what I gathered from all this. But over the last 7 months, Papa Gut, who is a streamer that talks about things going on in the community, has talked about Def Noodles 21 times. Okay? Now, it seems like it might be a lot, right? Maybe. But this is a matter of where Def Noodles is reporting situations and Def Noodle and Papa Gut is talking about them. He's not going in necessarily on him, and Papa Gut himself has even clarified, hey, just keep in mind, I defended you in some of these videos. I was on your side in some of these. So it's not like Papa Gut is a Def Noodles hate account. It's completely unhinged and illogical. His behavior is completely erratic. And he's just swinging for the fences about stuff that doesn't make any sense. Now, let's go to Def Noodles' channel real quick. I wasn't planning to do this, but let's just go to channel. Because he, really wants to focus on how many videos specifically state that they're involving Def Noodles, right? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think that was going to expand over to that side. Oh, well, we'll fix it in a second. All right, so let's go to Keemstar. Let's do Keemstar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. The list just goes on and on and on. So I feel like you really have no room to make this kind of argument, Def Noodles, when your whole thing for the last year has been, I'm a victim of Keemstar's deplatforming me. You have no room to make that argument at all. It makes zero sense. Okay? Now, Papa Gut put up a video the other day after a couple of back and forths that they've had, right? Let's see. I believe I have the tweets here. Ah, yes. This one is screen grabbed. Somebody grabbed. Actual photo of Papa Gut's car. Well, that seems like it's in bad taste. He's, that's a pedophile joke. Okay, it's kind of funny, but all right, whatever. I think these are out of order, unfortunately. Here we go. So, there was a tweet where somebody made a reference to Papa Gut making a joke about having sex with someone who was underage. Now, Papa Gut replied and clarified that what he was doing was satirizing somebody else, an alleged predator he was making fun of. He was calling them a predator, a pedo, by making a joke. Was it inappropriate? Debatable, okay? The joke was something about, where is it? Do I have the screenshot where he explains it? I don't have the screenshot where he actually explains the. Oh no, wait, there it is. The joke. The person is saying you think about effing kids. Is that true? The joke is if she's old enough to bleed, she's old enough to breed. Thank you very much, Andres Lopez, for the advice. So he's clearly accusing somebody else of being a predator, and claiming that was the advice that they gave him. The joke is not about a victim. Right? The joke was about the predator. Def Noodles later frames this as a joke about a victim, not about a predator. Okay? It was a satirical call out since he allegedly slept with a 14-year-old girl. It's a joke I've condemned multiple times, but that person isn't interested in honesty. And it wasn't Def Noodles, it was somebody else that this guy was replying to. Then Def Noodles quote tweeted it, said, this guy got famous on TikTok for quote-unquote joking. The joking being in quotes there obviously implies that he doesn't believe the guy's joking. He believes it's serious about screwing 14-year-old girls, then gets offended if someone jokes about him. But he was right. I shouldn't have said that. I should have instead said he makes himself so small in his videos to hide the fact that he looks like a pedophile. So the guy is just on multiple levels trying to imply that he's a pedo. Now notice down here, he tagged the FBI. Then, in a reply to that tweet, directly ats them in addition to tagging them. So, he didn't just tag them, didn't just at them, he did it twice. In the same thread. I don't have a date on this, a time stamp on this one, unfortunately. I don't know if he came back the next day because it didn't have enough interactions and did this on top. Put this MF on a watch list because he looks mad suspicious. Now, I planned at this point to not talk about him anymore, if I remember correctly. This is basically when I said I'm done. I'm not talking about Def Noodles anymore because he's completely dishonest, and I'm not talking about it anymore. Now, he's continued to make it sound like, oh, it's a joke, it's okay, it's a joke. But by that logic that it's okay to just accuse somebody or try and smear somebody's reputation online as a predator based on supposedly the way they look. That's the joke, right? Although he's multiple times tried to recontextualize all this to make it justified. He doesn't believe he's a pedophile, but here's the reason I can make that joke and you might believe it. You're trying to create this plausible deniability. That's all it is. Now, thank you, Def Noodles, for quote tweeting my full and honest explanation as to the joke I've condemned multiple times that was meant to call out an alleged predator. It's additionally interesting that we talked about this in a live conversation. You already understand the full context, or you should if you were actually listening. The reality is, I've put my platform on the line to deplatform multiple predatory content creators, and he lists a couple of them, while you intentionally misrepresent situations constantly to sensationalize a story. Using false pedophile accusations to try and deplatform somebody is absolutely disgusting and invalidating to actual abuse and molestation survivors. But it's clear you don't actually care about that. Now, if you're familiar at all with Def Noodles, he claims and he campaigns to be one of those people that wants to make a change. In that podcast that I just played clips from, right? He talks about like misinformation campaigns, and he talks about trying to like make the world a better place. And I didn't play all the, I don't include all the clips, but he talks about like trying to change things for the better, trying to change the world, trying to like awaken people, right? And how crazy it is that people do all this crazy stuff online. So he actively has a problem with the way social media does this stuff, which is why he does it as a joke. It's disgusting how people run these misinformation campaigns to get people to frame people and get people in trouble and be bad faith. But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do it as a joke because I don't know. But he's been he's actively been really strongly trying to run stories about sexual assault, COVID, things like that, while wanting to be seen as a jokester, a comedy haha people. Same thing I said about H3. But you can't do that while also being the meme guy. Because you either people can't take you seriously to that extent, or they can. Or you need to know how to execute. He doesn't know how to execute. Bottom line, he doesn't know how to execute. Now, there are ways you can make jokes like these and frame them correctly, and the joke comes across correctly. But when your joke is entirely, look at the guy that looks like a pedo, and then also I'm going to tag the FBI, and also I'm going to make it sound like this isn't really a joke, he actually means this. It sounds like you have a problem with him for real. Now, according to him, he's a jokester. He's just playing around. No one can take this seriously. Well, he also joined the live stream. According to him, the debate he had with Papa Gut, he has claimed since, he joined only to call him an incel. Married man Papa Gut is an incel. And then he repeatedly justified this by trying to argue with people, oh yeah, but married people statistically have less sex than unmarried people. What does the sex have to do with it? It's about the mentality. You're falsely conflating things to try and frame somebody in a negative light. Yeah, he doubled down on it. It's crazy. Thank you for stopping in. Have a good night. Where is everybody standing straight up calling Papa? Yeah, no, we're gonna get to clips of the. I have a couple timestamps from the Twitter Spaces, and yeah, I have a couple. There's also something new that came out today that we're gonna talk about that no one else has really talked about yet, and I don't think Tipster's gonna go live and he's gonna talk about some of this stuff, but I don't think he's even seen this yet. It's possible he might have seen a clip. I'm not sure, but we're gonna check out a lot. And I'm going to try and get as much of this done in 2 hours as possible. We're actually doing pretty good on time. Now, so Papa Gut puts out this video. Let me see. Do I have it here? No, I guess I was just going to go from here, I guess. The reason why Def Noodles is slandering me. Is this the one?
Okay, so it's been a very frustrating past couple of days. Specifically tonight, Dennis decided to leverage, or really just continue into his campaign of disinformation, slander, and harassment. That he was there to troll me. It's in one of my newest videos.
Here we go.
Of sexual assault. When you call somebody that's not a predator. I don't think that's unreasonable. It's very disrespectful to people who survivors, right? Dennis came in and was very aggressive. He wasn't open to listening. He was getting a bad response from his audience because of the way he interacted with me. despite the fact that I was a smaller content creator and he tried to use his platform to really
Bad faith noodles.
To just slander me. He was still getting backlash, and it felt very performative from him. It felt like he didn't really care, but he was just there to save face. And I know that sounds like I'm just speculating, and I was. I actually took it seriously until recently. In one of the more recent things he posted, he just says that he was there to troll me. It's in one of my newest videos. I should probably get it onto this list here. But he's like, oh, it's in one of my newest videos. Or excuse me. It's in one of my newest videos where he he has this unhinged thing. I make one about that. But he basically suggests that it wasn't genuine. He says it. He says, I was just there to troll you, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we're getting lost in the point. After that conversation, Dennis walks away. He apologizes again in a public video. He kind of clickbaits and says that he's leaving YouTube or something like that, blah, 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 blah. That's where this all starts from. And which kind of catches us up to where we are now. And that was a very embarrassing interaction for him, right? That catches up to where we are now. Where this is where it is. I was looking for it, like I didn't have it in the thing already. So somebody just mentions my name in the comments, unprompted, and they said that Kavos and Papa Gut own you. This is like shortly after he came back. Whatever. So he says Kavos quit YouTube, hasn't posted in weeks. Nobody would know who Papa Gut is.
That was another ridiculous random thing that was just a clear shot at Kavos that wasn't factual. Kavos posted a video like the next day. He hadn't posted in 3 weeks. That means he quit. What? Some people don't post every day. They're not no-lifers masquerading as comedians.
In commentary, had I not given him crumbs by doing a debate with the sole purpose of calling him an incel to his face and laughing in his face about it. Meanwhile, you're here sucking their micro peepees, right? So you see how he's just like, that just invalidates like any level of an apology. He goes on to reinforce that I must be an incel because married people that are married don't have a lot of sex. He shows a statistic somewhere in it. I guess he deleted the tweet. I don't know. It's insane. It's unhinged. I decided to talk about it. There you go. He didn't make me. I obviously, I've been working on, TikTok, Twitter, or YouTube more than anything else, and I've been like creating a small, strong community, right? Right. So I responded to that, of course, and saying like, you guys should know this already. I basically just tell him like he's wrong. We don't have to go through the specifics. I tell him how his credibility is dropping. You can watch the core video if you want, but the specifics don't really matter. Then, of course, in a comment, somebody's like, well, Papa Gut made a really gross joke when he was on TikTok. 100% true. It's one of the reasons why I was deplatformed, though it wasn't like immediate. It took like months after I'd said it. It was part of the reason why people started to look at me, because I would generated a very strong, commentary community.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think the joke that he made, directed at the guy, was funny. It was funny because it was directed at the guy, not the victim. I made a joke after Bill Cosby got released from prison that I wonder how many women are going to get something along the lines of like, I wonder how many women are going to fall asleep on the job and get fired before people actually blame him. That was the bit of the joke, right? But because I mentioned that there would have to be victims in that scenario, not the fact that he's getting a pass. Right? The joke is about him getting a pass, and it's clearly framing him as the bad guy. It's not about the victims. It's about him and painting him as the bad guy. But whatever's convenient for Deaf Noodles to paint them as the bad guy. That's what that joke did. Now, other people clearly were sensitive to that, and they weren't happy about it. But no one was mad in that situation, from what I gather, about the way it makes the bad guy look. It was about... Isn't it great hearing trucks over the mic? Anyway, no one was complaining about the way the joke made the guy look. It was because there was an actual valid allegation. Now, supposedly there's no allegation here. There's no accusation. So why does Deaf Noodles care so much about making Papa Gut look like a predator? So, all right, let me get back to here, because I didn't realize that one was in there. So, I stand by this. I care less about rape and pedo jokes than I do about false allegations about either. I try not to make jokes about them for the most part. And I can't remember any, to be honest. And that I mean, there are. I meant some in the context, right? In the context of like framing somebody undeserving of something wrong. Okay. I could care less if you make an Epstein joke about him being a predator. It's proven. You call EDP a pedo, I'm not going to care because he's admitted it on camera. But if you call somebody that hasn't done anything wrong and actually campaigns against that stuff, actually works against it, fights against it, then I'm going to have a problem because you're being dishonest. Okay? Especially if you stand by it and double down, triple down, and justify it rather than just make the joke and move on. If it was a one-time joke or whatever, okay, whatever, who cares? But if you justify it, try and rationalize it, and continue to make the joke, all of a sudden you lose a lot of that I'm just kidding faith. Weaponizing the topic is the problem I have. A joke can be not for you because it's traumatizing. That's fine. I get it. It's over your line. But the idea of using such serious topics, pun not intended because I said touchy topics, for the sole purpose of damaging or hurting somebody, especially if you consider yourself a moral or ethical superior like Def Noodles acts like he does, then it's a bigger problem. So, for full context, and then I linked the video, why Def Noodles is a bad person. Now, this isn't the one I'm showing you, I just showed. In that video, he cries and he talks about when his wife was assaulted and all these other different things. He goes into the fact that it was the first video in response to the pedo stuff from Def Noodles, okay? Now, in that video, I just want to really quick contextualize it, because I don't want to spend the whole time watching. It's like a 5-10 minute video, but it's, you know, it's a lot for a little bit of information. Long story short, he's helped in deplatforming multiple predators before on platforms. I believe both of them were on TikTok from what he said earlier. And he's been involved in discussion about this kind of stuff since then. In addition, he has serious traumatic stuff in his own personal life with someone very close to him, which I don't know when it was made public, but at some point it was made public, maybe in that video and I didn't catch it, I don't know. But his wife was brutally assaulted, apparently. I don't know the details, I don't know where he's gone into that. I've heard a couple people say different things, I don't know where they got the information from. I don't want to really look into that, it's their personal thing, they don't need people diving into it that deep, but apparently that's what happened, right? Now, if somebody in your life is so brutally assaulted, and when they come to you and talk to you about it, and you actually care about this stuff, it's going to matter to you. Def Noodles supposedly cares about this stuff. This stuff is supposedly important to Def Noodles. But what happens when he sees a grown man brought to tears thinking about how his wife was assaulted? He makes jokes about it. Takes the clip of him crying and makes jokes about it. The man's talking about how his wife was brutally assaulted, and he thinks it's funny as some kind of own. Yeah, well, you're crying online. Haha, your wife was sexually assaulted? Wow, what a loser. Hey, guess what? You're crying online. What happened to that moral and ethical superior that he was? Right? So, he also tried to own Cat 10 Barge for making false implications about people. Which, in this Twitter space, we're probably not going to listen to that part because it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of unnecessary. There's a couple of interesting things that happen there, but not really worth listening to. It's like 6 hours of stuff. We're not going to go into all that. But she contextualized this a little bit and explained, like, yeah, this is you're framing this all wrong. You're framing this all wrong. And he kind of had to admit to, like, yeah, you're kind of right, but can you agree with me that the media does this? Yes, Def Noodles. We all know that the media frames things dishonestly. Kind of like you. Kind of like you. Like, the way he goes about this stuff is just absurd. Oh yeah, I forgot. Let me see. Can I zoom in this? No, I can't zoom in on it. All right. It doesn't want to zoom in. Nick said, Cat, listen, this is an extremely base take. However, I quite like him like this. He should stay logged on. Bigger crater where his success used to be. What was it? I can't read BWC. It says, man used to get tweets in the tens of thousands of likes, and now he can't even break 100. True. I never watched their debate before, but this is something from their debate.
I think that weaponizing sexual assault, weaponizing pedophilia, weaponizing any form of abuse is extremely fucked up. I think that weaponizing...
Huh! Well, that's interesting, Def Noodles. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny that Def Noodles thinks it's really, really messed up to weaponize, weaponize abuse of any kind, right? But it's perfectly fine to make a man married to an assault victim look like a pedophile. That's perfectly fine. That's okay. That's not a conflict at all. That's not a problem whatsoever. Def Noodles' final joke trying to go Kaufman, making himself look as bad as possible so he can go, I got you, I faked the whole thing. Me, tells them a joke. Them, cries. He boiled down, falsely painting, I'm not even going to say accusing, painting Papa Gut as a pedophile to his audience, and people believed that's what he was trying to do. In his audience, they believed this. He takes an image of him crying about his wife's assault. Me, tells a joke. You're a pedophile. And now you're crying because of how I'm framing you, despite all you've done to, like, all you've dealt with regarding this kind of stuff. People don't seem to realize, like, there's a couple people in the commentary community that kind of like try to, like, yeah, they're right. A grown man crying about on the internet at all is just lame. Okay, Alpha Bro. You ever had an emotional moment? Have you ever actually had somebody in your life that had to deal with, like, something serious like that? I don't know if you have. This is his wife. This is stuff where she absolutely is still going through stuff every single day and has to try and, like, deal with stuff, like, through therapy and all that. Like, there's only so much you can overcome this stuff. It still bothers you every day, especially if someone is going to bring up this kind of stuff about your husband. Right? You don't think that's gonna like bring anything up? Like, Def Noodles is like, hasn't he talked about triggers and stuff like that before? He doesn't think at all that joking about how this guy is a sexual predator might trigger his wife. I guess that doesn't matter, right? But it's just a joke. I'm just kidding. It doesn't really matter what I said because I'm the one joking. You look like an idiot. You look like an idiot. So, now, I originally said days ago I was done talking about Def Noodles on my timeline, but unless he does something unhinged again, totally likely to be fair, I'm done tweeting about Dennis. The fact that he has still, without warrant, been going at Papa Gut with pedo memes, claiming he's the definition of an incel when he's clearly not. Imagine being married and sitting next to your wife in bed at 2:20 in the morning on a Sunday and tweeting a reply to me 2 minutes after I tweet something. This MF is the definition of an incel, a married incel. That doesn't even make any sense. For all you know, they just got done bumping the uglies. He's up at 2 a.m. It's not possible at all that they just had sex. And now, again, he's boiling this down to incel means just you don't have enough sex. He's painting the man as an incel. When incel, just like in my video, I talked about how he likes to paint people as these things that have multiple implications. He's painting him as an incel. Incel nowadays is essentially becoming synonymous with the alt-right. You hate women, you're misogynist, you're a sexist, you hate you hate trans people, like that kind of, like, you're all of these horrific things if you're under the incel banner. And he's tried to put him under the incel banner. Then he also tried to put him under the pedo banner. But we're the ones wrong, right? Dennis, once again, is neither being funny or acting in good faith. Whatever point he wants to make, he's failed to make. This is bait I'm not going to play into anymore on Twitter because it's gross. Remember when he said every joke has truth in it? Well, Dennis, what's the truth? He said that in his interview with Augie before the Vulture interview. Well, then where's the truth, Dennis? Where's the truth in him being an incel? Just the fact that he doesn't have enough sex, in your opinion? Or is it now that, well, there's not always truth in every joke. It's what's funny to me at the time. Keep in mind that his whole problem with Augie and everybody else in the community was that they made jokes that were too edgy. And now he's grandstanding about why it's okay for him to falsely paint somebody as a pedophile. I say on Twitter because tomorrow is Monday Night Mayhem. This was yesterday. I say tomorrow because Monday Night Mayhem tonight. I might want to talk about it once on stream. I post the VOD to YouTube, but still not planning on it. Not planning on giving any more of what little relevance I have left at this point. We already know he's a clown, nothing to prove. I don't feel like I had anything to prove. Now, still don't feel like I have anything to prove, but at this point, it's just too easy to own this dude on how stupid he is. This is something we're going to watch in a moment. Def Noodle's friend just said that he isn't gonna bow to white tears when asked to justify Def Noodle's weaponizing Papa Gut crying about the minimizing of pedo discourse around him. This dude actually just made the argument that Dennis is calling Papa Gut a pedo is okay because he's white. It's okay to make fun of him for crying on the internet about his wife being raped. Because he's white. And I'm not just saying that. I can go to the timestamp where he says it. This legitimately pissed me off because that is the most ridiculous justification for an unhinged comment like that I've ever heard. Where is it? 147. I went through and grabbed a couple timestamps before going live. There's a couple things that happen in here, so we're going to listen for a few minutes.
It becomes bigger than the actual people because what I'm seeing is it's not even about Papa Gut or Dennis. It's about who people align with and if you're on this side or if you're on that side.
Wrong. Him and Def Noodles both believe that everybody either loves Keem and hates Ethan or vice versa. No. There's a lot of people that dislike both of them strongly because both of them are scumbags. There's a lot of people that probably like both of them too, but they're quiet in all this because everybody hates everybody.
And Papa Gut and Def Noodles are not even really at the center of it. You got thousands of people in each other's comments. I got people who got Dennis's picture on my page, just bots, 30 of them, just commenting on things. It's no one's coming after them. No one's gonna say anything to them. No one's gonna say, "Oh, why are you guys, talking shit?" or "Why are you guys taking this out of context?"
No one's going to say, "Oh, why are you guys talking shit?" or "Why are you guys taking this out of context?"
Why are you guys making these jokes about these guys on YouTube? They're yada yada yada.
He's talking about what they're saying to him. I don't know why he said no one's going to say to them, "Why are you guys taking this out?" He's talking about what they're asking them. Why are you guys taking this out of context? Why are you guys making these jokes about these guys on YouTube? Why are you guys doing this? Why are you guys doing that, right? Keep in mind, he just complained that people are asking about why people are taking things, why people are asking why they're why you guys take things out of context? Why are you guys talking shit? Why are you guys doing this?
It's yo, I don't care about none of that shit. But the moment that, Dennis...
I don't care if people are taking things out of context. I don't care that people are being labeled as pedophiles.
Just makes a joke and tags the FBI. I thought that was... You think the FBI is sitting around trying to validate people's tagging on Twitter?
Did it ever occur to you, my guy, Steven, that there's multiple channels for tip lines? Did it ever occur to you that maybe when you say something like that, it may actually trigger an investigation? Investigations start with a single report. I guess this guy's not aware of that. Now, here's the thing. When so many people aren't really aware that you're joking, right? Your own audience has conveyed to you, this is inappropriate, this is over the line, and they can't tell that you don't believe this, right? A massive account. I don't think he's verified anymore. I'm pretty sure Def Noodles is not verified on Twitter anymore, I believe, because he would have a check mark there most likely if he was still verified. Actually, you know, we'll just double check real quick. Why not? We'll just double check real quick. Def Noodles. Not verified. Okay. I don't remember if he was verified before or not. I believe he was, but anyway. Now, here's what gets me, okay? They act like it's unrealistic that maybe somebody there's no way that the FBI are checking their DMs or their notifications or anything. They don't have a social media manager that checks these things for information. There's no way. Wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong. They have people that check their social media. They have people that use their social media. A social media manager. Now, how inappropriate would it be for the FBI to not take an allegation that they're given on any platform seriously? This is an insanely, ridiculously narrow-sighted, short-sighted argument from these guys. You think that they check social media DMs? Yes, because they have somebody that handles their social media. Do you think Comcast checks their social media? We only have internet where I live because I complained about the fact that they were toying with us on their customer service on social media. That's the only reason we were able to finally get through to somebody. Because massive companies, organizations, and even nonprofits have people handling their social media. You had a senator candidate for the senatorship, in here talking to you just based on the fact that you have followers. He had no clue what was going on. He didn't care what was going on. He just said, you have lots of numbers. I'm in here with you. Completely dumb. Completely brain dead. It's absolutely insane that this guy was in here. And it just... ridiculous. Anyway, the point being... The arguments don't make any sense. They don't stack up. You're not rationalizing anything properly here. You're trying to rationalize why you don't care and why you would go so far out of your way to make somebody look so bad. But you can't do it.
The fact that the FBI has a Twitter is a joke in itself.
They have too many things to do to care about Twitter.
They don't have an agent that runs the Twitter. It's a social media manager.
You really think they're over here like taking these? Like it was a joke. It was a clear joke.
That's the only thing he can say. Is that, oh, it's a joke. It's a clear joke. It's a clear joke to who? He tagged them twice.
Steven, my question to you is, Steven, can you tell me the joke about putting somebody's face on a T-shirt saying "cry about it" when he was crying about the hurt he heard about with his victims?
Yeah. And I think any grown adult, especially men, know that experience. Have someone related.
I think any adult grown male knows somebody that has had that experience. You think every grown man has had to hear their closest loved one talk about being brutally raped? I feel like you should be more sympathetic, not less sympathetic at that point. If anything, this makes him look worse.
To them that has that type of scenario going on, who's been through sexual assault directly or indirectly. Everyone on this chat has dealt with that. Like, that is a soft spot in anybody's reasonable logic life.
It's a soft spot in anyone's reasonable logic life. Grammar aside, what is the problem with him being emotional over his wife's rape then? What you just said makes it sound like it would be reasonable for him to have that moment.
In mindset. Now, if you're an adult and you see how the media works, this dude is making channels, or he's making YouTube videos for his, you know, as his career. Anyone knows like, I'm not bowing down to white tears. Okay.
I'm not bowing down to what he made his wife's rape and him being emotional about this. About race. This is a comedian that isn't making a joke. He means this.
Exactly.
And, we're going to push this authentic conversation.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm doing. And I talked about it yesterday. I tweeted about it. I said I'm shifting away from covering YouTube drama to more like, I feel like topics and things that are more like, if there's more weight to them, you know what I mean?
Right.
That I can maybe use my platform to have a greater impact. I'm not saying that
I can maybe use my platform to have a greater impact. One day after shaming a guy for crying about his wife's rape.
I'm the best at doing it, but I do it to the best of my ability that I'm trained to do.
Right.
So, it was interesting to have that conversation yesterday. It was a difficult conversation. It was like there were a lot of challenging moments. A lot of people were in there to get the W. And I even said, like,
was there?
Like you mentioned, I even said, like, people are so obsessed with like getting the W or you got the L.
Even the bots.
Your entire thing, Def Noodles, is spinning semantics to get a W.
Even the
bots are trying to. Oh, you responded, I win, bro.
Yeah,
that means that they're not a bot. If they're actually making statements like that, then they're not a bot because they're reacting to you.
It's like,
calm down, man.
You know what it is? You know what it is in the end of the day? It's people who like desperately have nothing going on in their lives, first off, and they desperately want some kind of validation.
Right.
And
you want to validate your arguments against Papa Gut, framing him as a pedophile that you didn't mean. But everyone else that's upset, including your audience, they're the ones that are stupid. They're the ones that are just not getting the joke.
And there's like little things that you can do on the internet. Oh, this person who is on something.
It's so easy to pick out the hypocrisy, contradictions, and total BS that he just throws out there that I can do it live. There's hardly anyone I can do this with live because it takes a lot of planning and putting things together. But this dude is so dumb. Him and his friends are so dumb that they will completely shift in a 24-hour period.
And like people know of, they responded to me. Oh yes, I got their attention. I
got
win.
their attention.
I know I seem like I'm seething, and to an extent I am about specifically the wife thing. That genuinely has me like livid. The fact that he claims that Papa Gut used his wife as a shield, when Def Noodles is the one that started making the sexual predator allegations. He started, like I said earlier, I was going to say allegation. Framing. He framed him as a pedo.
I win. They're supposed to just ignore me. Like, dude, the person can do whatever the fuck they want with their platform. It's their platform. They're going to do whatever the hell they want, you know?
But that's the thing. You look at their platform and they're...
Remember that Def Noodles has complained before about punching down. Def Noodles has a larger platform than Papa Gut. But he's arguing that he created Papa Gut, not that he's punching down by framing as a pedophile.
They're building their platform off of internet heckling.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they feed off of that.
Yeah.
Because you go to their platform and it's like they just made the profile yesterday.
Yeah.
They got 2 followers and they're following 5,000 people.
Oh yeah. And, or it's like a weird account. Remember when Johnny Mac was here and was like going through and he found an account? Folks, we were here, what was Thursday night? Like one of Steven's co-hosts on his podcast pulled up an account because we were talking about, Yeah, like people who check those accounts and they had the exact same bio, exact same.
All right, we'll come back to that. I can't remember where the part was. Anyway, we'll go back to this part.
Okay, you crying online, I'm thinking you signaling something completely different. If you're sad,
wait. What does white tears have to do with him being upset with victims of sexual assault? How did that turn into that?
Because he's a white man crying, and it probably has a different effect if it was a black man crying or a black.
Huh. So if it was a black man crying about his wife's rape, it would be okay. But because it's Papa Gut, it's not okay. Cool. That makes sense.
Steven,
Amen to that.
Steven,
And then, by the way, this is a black woman that's criticizing this. I can't remember who it is. According to the people that I think it's Sage Mama. Yeah, Sage Mama. That's where the lines are. They were talking. Sage Mama, as I understand it, is a black woman. So they were being critical of this, and the other people in the chat were saying amen, and they're co-signing what he just said. The white guy crying about his wife's rape, that's cringe. We can make fun of that. Black guy crying, black woman crying, no, that's inappropriate.
are you one of the co-hosts of the of his podcast? I think you sound familiar. I apologize. I'm newer to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm on the podcast. I mean, yeah, I'm on there, and it sounds like you guys, follow Papa Gut religiously as well, right?
I follow both.
Religiously. Even in this conversation, he's trying to frame it like there's no merit to what they're saying because they must be Def Noodles haters.
I follow both Def Noodles and I follow Papa Gut, which just makes it more odd as to how they started.
Because it's not possible that you can like two different people that create content on the internet.
Beefing. So I think you missed a lot of context too, Steven. But I say this with all due respect.
I did miss a lot of context. I did. Like I said, I'm not on the internet. I've been getting dragged in a Papa Gut tweet for the past 6 days. I've never heard about the guy.
Right. But
So he has no idea what the context of the situation is. Now, believe it or not, in this podcast from today that was streamed today, he's aware of the context. Opinion hasn't changed.
I think we're getting to the bottom of the problem is that we don't quote unquote know, and we quote unquote aren't doing our research. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
That's irrelevant.
That's very relevant to what we're talking about right now.
It is relevant.
It's not, because is anybody correcting Papa Gut?
Correcting Papa Gut on what? You don't know about Papa Gut, so what is there to correct? Def Noodles hasn't raised a question with Papa Gut to be corrected.
Yes.
Yes, actually.
Why y'all over here? I got people in my DMs mad.
Is anyone correcting Papa Gut? They say yes, and he's like, well, then why are you over here? Go question him. Because they want to talk to Def Noodles about his situation right now. They may have already addressed Papa Gut. Why are you complaining because they're addressing a problem with another creator that they like?
About Christian Walker, I'm like, go talk to Christian Walker. How do we platform the dominant narrative? How the hell do we platform the narrative that's already dominant?
I'll tell you.
It's funny because Def Noodles has argued about like people being platformed and stuff before, as I understand it. Def Noodles, let me double check. If I remember correctly, let's see. I know he's argued that James Charles platformed the Lopez brothers and all these other things. So Def Noodles himself has made the platforming argument himself. But this guy's like, well, how do you platform like the most relevant hate form in the world? So you think that putting it on the platform was better than not putting it on the platform when you weren't going to be able to do anything against it? You have to be capable of fighting those things if that's your goal. Steven is a comedian apparently who like hosts shows in LA and stuff. So let's look up real quick. Okay, let me see. Can I actually search without blowing up? Okay, wait, I can. Joe Rogan. Trisha Paytas goes off on Joe Rogan. Austin McBroom just read Tana Mongoose read Joe Rogan roasted. Join the defenders. He talks about Joe Rogan a bit here. I don't have a specific instance of where Ethan Klein destroys Joe Rogan. Now, one of the arguments that has been used by people like H3, okay, is that Joe Rogan platforms ideas that are dangerous. So the platforming narrative is fine when Def Noodles and Ethan Klein and people use it against people. But it's not okay when people use it against you. Okay.
I'll tell you exactly.
White supremacy runs the globe.
Steven, I'll tell you exactly. I'm okay. Again, I'm Black Lives Matter all the way. I don't know how we're getting into that conversation. I
don't know what that even means, but
I'm Black Lives Matter all the way. I don't even know what that means. Huh? This dude is like, it's almost like this dude is specifically here just to be difficult with anyone that's critical at all. He's trying so hard to defend Def Noodles over such minor things.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what it means in a second. I think the problem is that with Def Noodles Twitter, Dennis, I like to refer him to his natural name because we're going to talk like humans. The problem is that as an audience member, we're seeing a whole slew of him being called, he's looking like a pedophile. Fast forward, as an audience member, we're also seeing Papa Gut cry because he's offended, which he should be, and he takes the seriousness of sexual assault very serious. Earlier, Dennis said he didn't watch the whole video and he wasn't too familiar with Papa Gut, which destroyed a lot of context to what Dennis should have needed before.
So, and I did hear this, but I didn't feel like going and trying to scroll through this and listen to the whole thing again to find the timestamp. But as she said, he did state that he's a busy guy. He doesn't have time to watch all the videos that he comments on, this, that, and other thing. So he's openly admitted that before he took that screenshot and ran with it, I don't necessarily know what's going on. But he was on a podcast talking about how you have to be careful with your words and misinformation and how you frame people. So he stands so much for this that he cares. He doesn't care at all. He's just going to do it to everybody. Doesn't matter who he destroys or what happens.
Or getting into anything with Papa Gut. So when you say that you don't know anything about the internet, no disrespect, it shows, right? Because we're missing
context.
context.
I'm fine with that. I'm okay
that's
with that.
his priority.
Just like with Dennis
Listen, I have no problems going toe to toe with fans or people who work with him. Because I want Dennis to win. Like,
I'm not trying to go toe to toe with anybody. This is the thing. Like what Dennis said about.
I want to see Dennis win, but you can't fill his
you
head
remember?
with yes
You remember
shit.
when he said jump on the bomb? You remember when he said that
Yes.
in the improv? Like that's exactly what it is. Like I had nothing about Papa Gut, so Dennis jumped on the bomb that came through whatever this Papa Gut drama is. He's like he said, the video that they're talking.
He didn't jump on the bomb. He set the timer.
About happened 4 or 5 months ago. I don't even think I was on the show when Dennis
You missed
did
another
the interview
video then.
with Papa Gut.
Then you missed
But
another
it
video.
also kind of seems like you jump on the bomb and then it explodes, and you're like, "Why are you hurting me, bomb? Because you jumped on it."
I don't
know.
I just want to add one thing about the context that people are saying. I think yes, context is important, but I think we're still able to have conversations about the greater scheme of things without having the full context. It's not because Steven has built his career very successfully as a comedian outside of the internet that he can't understand what's happening, because it's the same dynamics play out.
So think about what he just said. I don't think we have to have the full context to have a conversation about the greater scheme of things. What is the greater criticism of Papa Gut? He has nothing to criticize Papa Gut for, but he has continued to go at him about him looking like a pedophile and insinuating that he is one. So if there is nothing to criticize him for, if there's no point, then why is he constantly trying to frame him and paint him as a pedophile? What is the point of that? And if the context isn't necessary, then why are you doing it? Like, what is the... It doesn't make any sense that he talks in the podcast, that he references over and over again throughout this 6-hour conversation with people, that he lays out exactly what he does, and the truth is in there, and this, that, and the other thing. But then in this conversation, he repeatedly contradicts it.
Out through society.
Again, it's the Jeff Wittick 1-for-1, dude. You can't just say, "Oh, we don't need context. We just need the headline." Like, you need more than the headline. You need to understand what's going on before you speak on a subject.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying, but it's not what I'm saying. I'm not.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying, like, but it's not what I'm saying. I'm not.
I'm not saying you don't need the headline. I'm saying.
That's not what she said. She didn't say you don't need the headline. She didn't say you need the headline. She said you need the context of what's behind the headline. You look at a book and you don't read it.
Steven can still have his point of view regardless of the context, he is currently living through the situation. He is giving his point of view of being tagged in all these threads and having all these people talk about it and getting DMs. So,
but you're the one, Dennis, that talked about how everyone on the internet is constantly misinformation and out of context, and he himself complained about how the internet takes things out of context, while he supported you deliberately taking things out of context. I misjudged how much oxygen I had left in my lungs. The point is, he himself is so unself-aware that 5 minutes earlier in this conversation, he was just talking about lack of context and how the internet takes things out of context, and you're the victim of being taken out of context, while he is defending taking out of context to make someone look bad for stuff that's not true. It's not an out of context meme. You raise the stakes.
He's actively sharing his point of view of the situation based on what he's lived through so far. So we shouldn't be discounting what he's saying just because he hasn't been watching every single Papa Gut video that
he didn't need to watch every single Papa Gut video. He needed to know what the context of why he was crying
he's made about me. Because, folks, like I don't think
we're not trying to say that. We're not.
I don't think anyone's saying that.
Most people
don't
trying
to say that.
To watch.
They're even saying that's not what we're saying. You're still not getting it.
Puts out a lot of videos. Like I try to watch my favorite creators. Like I get to watch them maybe once every 3 days, a video that they post that I like. I don't even get to watch my favorite creators because of the work that I have to do. Because I have to watch a whole bunch of other people as well. You know, so
I feel like this conversation got with.
So anyway. I think that was about the end of that part. All right. I don't think we're going to go too much more into that. I'm not sure if we're going to go into Nick's. We'll save Nick. We'll save Nick's part for later. All right. But I definitely want to. Get to this part before we get these few timestamps in here done before we at 11 o'clock my time, so in about 15 minutes I want to be done with the actual conversation, like the actual video part of this, and then we'll open up the callers or something else, or just end it. Come on, play. And let me refresh it, and it went to the wrong thing. 220.
Feelings. With that being said,
it's ironic. I don't know what happens in this business, and that's what happens when you're doing the options.
My joke. I don't know what.
Options
I don't know.
I know what you're saying. I trust me. I ignore.
I'm not trying to be like I'm not trying to come at you. I'm just trying to speak to you as a person. You know, that if you want to grow as an individual, you know.
I cycle through those things on a consistent basis on how I react and how I respond to stuff. Everything I do it from a place of authenticity. And I don't know how to react any other way.
Authenticity.
And honestly, I try to improve myself consistently as much as I can, as much as a person humanly can. I am flawed. I'm going to continue being flawed as long as I exist in this world. You know, so, and I'm never going to say that I'm perfect. In fact, I've admitted and said numerous times here that maybe I crossed the line, maybe I went too far, and that's what happens. That's what happens in this.
I've admitted multiple times here that maybe I went too far, maybe I crossed the line. Maybe? What is the problem he has with Papa Gut? It has not been explained, aside from the idea, apparently, that he made a joke that Def Noodles wasn't happy with. No one knows why Def Noodles really has gone after him this far. He seemingly stopped, kinda, and then all of a sudden, pedo meme, as soon as this thing came up. It was almost like he was waiting for an opportunity to own him somehow, and had nothing prior to that.
This business, and that's what happens when you're doing the kind of work that I do. Now,
that is not authentic. That's dishonest and manipulative.
Authenticity.
All I promise people is that I'm going to always be authentic and be myself and give them that in my own unique point of view. I think that, you know, being somebody who grew up outside country who has
it's the Hassan argument.
Completely different life experience from what it is like in America, to grow up in America. Like, I think that maybe a lot of like what I do, it just seems alien to most people, but to me it makes sense. Like
I guess maybe it's because I'm not from America. Maybe like when I came over here when I was really, really young, and maybe that's why my sense of humor as an adult is like just doesn't jive with enough people. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why. You know. Maybe it's because I'm not a full-blooded American citizen, or maybe it's because I'm not born here. Maybe it's because I'm part Brazilian. He's trying to make it that maybe it's because I'm not I'm not from here, that I don't quite really understand the severity of my words. Douchebag, you were on a podcast talking about the severity of people's words. You were talking about the weight of people's words. You were talking about how everybody online misframes people, it's misinformation campaigns, and is dishonest. And now you're using the fact that you're not 100% American or something to try and skate away from this. This is very much the same thing Hassan tried to do when he did the whole America deserves 9/11 meme, right? And then he went on his uncle's show and said, I don't know, chalk it up to being my second language, after giving this really well and eloquently spoken speech about all these complex issues. He said, I guess maybe it's just, because English is my second language. Dude, you were using, university textbook words. You weren't using, elementary school words. You were very well spoken. You clearly knew what you were indicating. You very clearly knew what you were saying. Def Noodles knows exactly what he was doing. It's spin. It's dishonest, and it's inauthentic. While saying he's being authentic, he's being inauthentic.
The whole, I still can't believe that in the video where I went to interview Austin and he tried to, kidnap me, people didn't see the joke of me wearing such a ridiculous, obviously awful, disguise. It was meant to be the joke itself, of me trying to disguise myself by obviously...
It doesn't... I still don't understand what he's trying to say there. He's trying to I wore a terrible disguise because being a bad disguise is funnier than being in a good disguise. No, we get the joke with that. We get it. You were in disguise. That's okay. That humor is from the 1940s. People have been doing that since the 1940s. We get it. Okay. Okay, all right. That's funny, You put on a fake mustache? Okay. Top hat and fake mustache? All right. No one's saying that's not a joke. No one argued with you whether or not that was funny or whatever. The way he leaps through these massive holes in conversation to try and get around the actual talking points is just absurd. Now, I think we will actually go into the into the Nick video, because we've got 40 minutes more that I planned to keep open for this. There's only one more timestamp I want to go to, and this is just funny. This is actually just comedy. This is actual comedy, by the way. If you follow comedy at all, you're aware of different comedy buildings, the comedy companies. There's there's the Groundlings, which is an improv and sketch comedy troupe. You got things like the Improv, which is a chain of comedy stores. You got the Comedy Store itself. You got the Comedy Cellar in New York. Come on, play. Oh, you're a dick.
I don't
already.
I don't know why I was having a hard time skipping.
Just if I have actually a lot of video of this of me coming up in New York and doing the hosting the shows that I did and all that stuff. But if you could have seen what my training was to get to where I'm at, the years that I spent in basements, from basement to basement in New York, in the East Village, going from the Greenwich Village Comedy Club to the Grizzly Pear, which is down the street from the Comedy Cellar, where I hosted shows at the Grizzly Pear, then going to Brooklyn.
I hosted comedy shows at the Grizzly Pear, which is down the street from the Comedy Cellar. He just name dropped the Comedy Cellar as a place that was down the street from a place he performed. The guy hasn't performed at the Comedy Cellar, but I did perform down the street from the Comedy Cellar. He's trying so hard to validate his comedy career by shoehorning a mention, like, okay, what are you gonna say next? Well, I've also performed in LA, like, which is also the same city where they have an improv. It's so dumb. He tries so hard to make himself sound so accomplished. All right, we got like 2 more sections of this I want to cover, and then we'll go to Nick's video real quick.
Tweets and everything. They were liking each other's tweets, so it was like
It's
somebody.
goofy.
Exactly. So it's just somebody cycling through their accounts, liking their own from different accounts to make it seem like the hate is getting more engagement than what it actually is. You know, so it's crazy. So we got Sarah saying the fact that they wouldn't let you speak was infuriating. It was almost an attack on your character, and it was a bad look. Not you, Def. We know.
Okay, the way they wouldn't let you talk. Moron, he has control of this Twitter space. He can talk over people too. He could mute people if he wants. He could kick them out of the chat. He could do whatever he wants. It's his Twitter space. He's the one in control. His fans are trying to, like, give him as much room for benefit of the doubt as possible while being completely uncharitable to everyone else in the conversation. People tried to be charitable with Def Noodles. Augie was charitable and had a conversation with him to begin with. We tried in DMs, things like that, back in the day. And he was unwilling to listen. He's lost that goodwill. He thinks now, why are people still being uncharitable to me? But he was uncharitable to begin with and didn't want to listen to people that were being charitable.
Yeah, you know, like people who follow me and have joined the podcast and heard our conversation. We've been doing it, like Steven said, for like 9 months. You know the kind of person I am. Like, and I was there for 6 hours. I was trying to, talk to everyone, be reasonable.
Bro, you were being patient as hell. I could not believe it. I was like, this dude, Dennis, is really out here on the Twitter space talking to fucking 1,200 people. And it's some wild, wild west shit because there's no moderation going on.
No.
The conversation.
Dennis is the moderator. That's his job when he's hosting a Twitter space. He's hosting. He's doing a bad job of moderating. That's his fault.
Hits like 10 different points without any definition of actually what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a conversation that really gets turned into like a debate or a war or an all-out. It was an all-out battle, essentially. It was weird because it was like everyone's got their guns drawn and they're shooting, but they're coming to you to tell you to put your gun down.
Yeah.
And it's like, how you, all right, I'm in the war. You want me to, everybody's shooting at me.
This is the guy, by the way, that doesn't know anything about internet culture, doesn't understand how to have this internet discourse or whatever. This is the guy that is saying this.
Everybody else, and it's mostly just targeted at me.
Yeah.
But you coming in the middle of the battle and telling, "Hey, put your gun."
It's mostly Wait, what? Did he just make this about himself?
How you? All right, I'm in the war. You want me to? Everybody's shooting at me. Everybody else, and it's mostly just targeted at me.
Yeah.
He just made it about himself. No one was going at you, dude. No one was talking about the Steven dude except for the fact that he had a bad take. He was such a small part of this interaction. Where on earth is he? Well, it's mostly people coming at me. What the heck was that?
But you coming in the middle of the battle and telling, "Hey, put your gun down. You need to get off of this. You're not." It's just, bro.
Yeah, I'm gonna do more Twitter Spaces. It's gonna be a little more curated. The ones that I do. I'm thinking.
Is this dude like detached?
That's like a
from reality, not just social media.
I'm thinking of doing it every couple of weeks or maybe once a month. So don't worry. Somebody just said in the chat that they would love to. They said, "My guy, I've been waiting to say something to you, and I was super patient." So I'm gonna do more.
Yeah, there was
Twitter
a lot
Spaces.
of people. I got a lot of DMs too. That are like, "Can you? I want to go up there and talk with Dennis. I want to say something and da da da."
Yeah.
I just couldn't get to it.
The conversation got kind of taken the other way, so it got taken. So I'm gonna do it eventually. I think more people will have the opportunity to do this. Also on Patreon on Wednesdays,
I don't care.
The first one that we do And it's going to be very exciting. We're going to live stream it on Twitch. We're going to live stream it on the YouTube.
He's talking about his roast battle he's
going
to do.
Specifically, this is where it's going to house it. Then the next day we're going to talk about it, and we're going to start doing it every 2 weeks, and then I think eventually we'll build it out where we do it every night if possible, or every couple of nights. There you go. They're cutting the wood, folks. They're cutting the wood. Anyway. Somebody said, you asking Nick to be a mediator and Papa Gut refusing to have one is incredibly telling. Yeah, it just happened that I thought, and look, Nick is a person who if you don't know who Nick is, he's a guy who's made several videos about me. He clearly does not like me. So the fact that I asked somebody who does not like me to be a moderator, that also feel like,
you
clearly
were just setting yourself up and still being like, hella fucking, I don't even know what it was at that point.
Yeah.
Hey, has it ever occurred to anybody? If you actually listened to the call, if you actually were there listening, you would have heard that Def Noodles actually talked about how Nick ran from him when he tried to he offered for Nick Diorio to come out to the thing, and he never replied. He hid from him or something like that. But then he brought Nick up when he was asked to later, and Nick says Nick and him had this conversation, and at one point, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. So keep all this in mind. He kind of pretends when he actually talks to Nick, like there's no issue. Like you seem to think I have an issue with you. He just indicated here that he did have an issue with him. Nick clearly doesn't like me and this, that, and the other thing. No, he doesn't like you. But you're acting like you don't have an issue with him. So if you don't have an issue with him behaving himself and actually acting in good faith as a moderator is actually more telling of him, not of you.
Yeah. Because it was like, that's a setup.
Yeah.
You have a heart of gold, and you're just like, all right, even though
it's a setup. How is it a setup? Def Noodles is the one that brought Nick in and allowed him to be a moderator. It has how is that a setup?
Someone don't like me, I'll still let them moderate and see how this takes place.
And even though, and funny enough, Nick is Nicholas Diorio. So funny enough, even though he dislikes me, a few times he was like, all right, you got to let Dennis talk.
Because it was...
It's almost like you have the wrong idea about the people that you're going after and going at, but refuse to listen to them and actually take what they say to heart. It's almost like Nick is the rational one, but you've continued to, in your mind, make him the irrational one.
Clear that Mama Gut was being erratic. It was clear. It was clear.
He was being erratic.
He was being unhinged, and then he would take it back and be like, well...
Here's what gets me, okay? What we're going to hear in a minute, if I remember the timestamp correctly, what we're going to hear in a minute is where they basically go over the fact that, his wife was raped, but he was being performative by crying on camera. Being unhinged and acting erratic doesn't indicate that he was actually not fully comprehending of how he was acting. It's almost like him being in this state of mind and behaving like this makes it more logical that you were wrong and it wasn't performative. In addition, all of a sudden now you're invalidating someone's experience with their partner who is a victim of brutal sexual assault.
It was... I don't know, man. The frustrating thing was just like, what I feel is that he was weaponizing his tears online.
Yeah, that's...
You didn't weaponize an allegation. You didn't weaponize the framing of him as a pedophile, even if it wasn't an allegation. You didn't weaponize his looks to try and make him sound like he was some kind of pervert and discredit him to your audience by giving him a label. But he was trying to weaponize his wife's sexual assault story. It's not possible that it's something that actually bothers him, actually affects him. It's not possible that he actually is emotional and upset when someone brings up these topics to him in reference to him and weaponizes them against him. It's not possible at all, right?
So that was a little bit. I mentioned it. I mentioned it, and he like got really annoyed when I mentioned it. But the fact is, he couldn't find another way to respond to my joke other than to weaponize someone else.
He cried at the end of like a 15-minute video where he went over all of the problems with everything. He found a lot of ways to respond. He got emotional at the end of an emotional rant where he was going over all of this information about what you're contextually missing and deliberately ignoring about him. You took him out of context to shame him after he had given the context. You ignored everything about what happened that caused him to be emotional. To me, this is blatant evidence that Def Noodles is completely fake. He doesn't actually care about victims because this dude's wife is a victim. He feels deeply for his wife's situation. He had an emotional moment, but let's make fun of him for it. Let's make fun of him for being emotional on behalf of his wife's situation, being emotional for all the times that he's had to be there for his wife about things.
Else's, essay.
Right.
So
and
he
got
couldn't,
like as a comic, as someone who talks on stage and fills out a room and knows actually what is going on by every moment, like increment of energetic shit that's going on.
Yeah.
Bro,
I don't even know what he's trying to talk about here. I don't even know what he's trying to say. I can read a room. Yeah, but you can't read the internet room. You don't know how to read what's going on the internet. Neither does Def Noodles. You might be able to read the room of a bunch of drunk people in a club at 1 a.m., but you clearly don't know how to read the room with the people on the internet that are trying to have an actual discussion when you can't seem to separate when you're trying to joke around about things from when it's time to stop, relax, and chill.
He got onto the Twitter space, and forgive me, I'm just gonna say it, but he was pulling emotionally for sympathy, because not only is he
because he was emotional about the way he is being painted, framed, and treated by Def Noodles and his audience. I don't know how it's such a hard concept to grasp, or if they're deliberately trying to be dense, but they're claiming to be authentic. Okay? If they're actually authentic, they're incredibly stupid. Because this is a podcast, this isn't even his show. This is supposedly where he's being real. No satire or whatever. This is legit. They're giving actual opinions. I mean, obviously there's some satire, like sarcastic jokes and things like that, satirical behavior. But supposedly, this is legit. Where they are still continuing to not be able to grasp the scope of what's happening.
He breaking down well, it was about my wife. He's like, what do you know about the tears and the blood and the force and he's describing this shit in this visual way,
and we didn't even fucking know. We specifically.
We didn't know because I didn't think about it. I didn't actually pay attention, and I didn't actually look to see what the situation was before I shamed the guy. We didn't know. That's your fault. That's why it's a problem, and we brought it to you. This is why people like Def Noodles are not taken seriously. And then when he wonders why he's not taken seriously, he can't stand it.
About the picture, dude, we saw it for half a second here.
Yeah.
We saw the clip half a second. We saw a funny still, and that's it. That's what we did, right?
We saw a funny still. A guy crying about his wife's rape. That's a funny still. Haha.
And it was the joke was never about the rape. The joke was about a grown man crying. That's it.
Oh! So, it's a grown man crying. Grown men can't be emotional, and grown men can't open up about what's going on in their lives. It's almost like that's something like his audience would usually determine to be a toxic masculinity mindset. I mean, personally, I would try not to cry on the internet. I think it's a smart move not to, because you're going to get shamed for things and things like that. But I think it's perfectly fine to open up about things and be honest with yourself. And if something is something you need to talk about and it's going to be emotional and you cry, oh well, it happens and you're going to have to deal with the consequences of it. However, the problem we have here is not that like Leafy made fun of Papa Gut for crying. It's that Def Noodles and Moral Authority Squad are grandstanding about things while also shaming a rape victim's husband for crying while talking about her rape. He looks away from the camera. I agree with Red Hood Assassin. He looks away from the camera, covers his mouth, and then if I remember correctly, that's when he walks away. He doesn't sit there and like wipe his eyes and like make it clear that he's crying. He tried not to cry on camera. They didn't have the context, they didn't care about the context, and now they're even making fun of him still about the context. It's not about his wife's rape. You're making fun of the moment that he broke down in tears because of his wife's rape. This is a situation where, remember what Dennis said earlier and what we talked about earlier about Dennis's whole, if the joke's about the victim, it's a problem. Well, sorry, he actually, I guess I didn't play that part. He makes that argument in the call with Papa Gut, which I don't feel like listening to. It's a long, messy conversation, but he makes that argument in there like, you can't make the joke about the victim. Well, it wasn't about the victim. In this case, you made the joke about the person that was helping the victim, who was sympathetic to the victim. So, do you actually care about the victims? Are you actually the guy that's like, that you pretend to be, that you claim to be? Or are you like I've accused you of being since the beginning of all of this stuff? Are you just fake?
Yeah, there's a Michael Jordan meme.
There's a Michael Jordan meme.
We're on the internet. We know the elements of the internet that...
I thought you don't know what the internet's like, guy.
...is heinous as fuck. People crying is one of those things.
Yeah.
It's heinous when people cry. Isn't that just it's
I don't
crazy?
care what you crying for.
Yeah.
You got tears. You're white online. You're drumming up some sympathy.
And it's very tactical.
Oh, can we hear that again?
People crying is one of those things.
Yeah.
I don't care what you crying for.
Yeah.
You got tears. You're white online.
You're white online. Why is it about race again? It's about his wife's sexual assault.
You're drumming up some sympathy.
This genuinely pisses me off because it's so dishonest. They're rationalizing their situation. They're rationalizing their standpoint and disregarding what normally their morals and ethics would be.
It's very tactical to do it. So somebody's
very
asking,
tactical.
Somebody's saying
assumed.
Emily
They're
Chris
assuming
said,
this.
Men having emotions is a way to manipulate people. So there's a difference between having an emotion and then having it online performatively.
Hey, you know what, Dennis? I seem to remember a video where you had an emotion. Def Noodles Kavos.
Hey guys, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to have a conversation with you guys because
is this the kind of thing that he like thinks he can equate this to? Kavos roasted him for being lame. He called him lame. I don't know if that's what he's equating this to. I don't know what's going on. But he's like, I don't know where he's getting this weird... That was the word I was going to use. Inconsistent. They're both wildly inconsistent. Steven is the only one consistent with his racism. I'm going to be careful. I'm not going to say that. I shouldn't have even read it, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have read that normally. But I wouldn't say necessarily racism. But the dude seems to have a problem with equating everything to race. I wouldn't say it's necessarily racism, but he seems to think that it plays a factor in every single little thing. Even when we're talking about Dennis going back and forth with this guy, right? However, this guy seems to be making this about him. Why on earth is it, well, he's white, when Def Noodles is white passing? Def Noodles doesn't talk about being Brazilian all that often. He's got, like, Brazilian genes or whatever. Like,
performatively, and feelings change. Like, feelings supposed to lead you to reason.
Yep.
Like, feelings change from every 5 minutes. So for you to come on a Twitter space 4 days later and be like, my feelings, my bro.
Yep.
You mean 4 days of continuously posting pedo memes about him? And continuously harassing him, honestly? With jokes about him being a pedo and crying about his wife's sexual assault? It's completely dishonest. It's completely dishonest, and it's just more proof of what we already knew about Def Noodles and why we don't like him.
Now, you're piggybacking off of someone else's drama so that you can drum up sympathy for yourself.
Dennis, I don't want to move past this point because this is like a...
He accused Papa Gut of piggybacking off of his wife's sexual assault.
Really, this is really something. Dennis, have you ever loved somebody before?
Nicholas.
Don't Nicholas. You're
Yeah, man.
Wait. Why did he reach to Nick? What was he looking for in moderation there? They weren't speaking over each other. What was he reaching to Nick for there?
I don't fucking
No, don't. This is like a really dishonest thing. No, Dennis, this is a really good question. Have you ever been in love before?
Okay, look.
So now we're gonna talk about Nick's conversation with him a little bit for the next 15 minutes, and then we'll hop into Discord or something.
Last night I was given the opportunity to chat with a YouTuber whom I've made a significant video on about a year ago, and I know you all read the title, so you know it's Def Noodles. In 2020, when we had drama, Def Noodles chose not to talk to me, but to go on John Swan's stream. In 2021, when we had our drama, and I made a video on him, before that he had chose to debate Augie. So finally, Def Noodles took my call during a Twitter Space stream, and we were able to interact for the first time ever. Weird, right? Just to be clear, this is a second channel video, so I'm not going to give you the whole backstory of Def Noodles. Frankly, I have a 50-minute video on that.
Skip through
over
here
the
a
last
little bit.
and in some depth on Twitter.
We've already kind of gone through a lot of this.
Okay, cool. I'm not a called out applying that reply between like this whole post or whatever. Papa Gun.
Oh, he's covering. Okay, let's just go to where the.
Ask him about.
Oh, there you go. There's
on the joke saying that Papa Gut drives a pedo van and he sold merch with Papa Gut crying on it, which I mean I don't really care about. But that was following Papa Gut's emotional response. Eventually, Def Noodles story one. That's no space, and I was able to ask him about this more directly.
I know Nick Diori wanted to go on, or someone just sent me something saying he wanted to go on.
he can replace my spot. That's no problem.
Okay.
Hello.
What's up?
That's my audio.
It's fine.
Perfect. I don't think we've actually spoken before in like the full year that we've had an issue. It's weird. I just kind of want
Hold
to...
on. So,
sure.
Understand, what issue do you think we have? Because I don't...
He's acting like they don't have an issue.
I think you're kind of...
Wait, you like me?
I honestly... I don't know you, so how can I form an opinion about you?
I don't know.
It's really interesting that he's pretending like I don't have a problem with you. I don't really know you. How could I possibly form an opinion about you? But on the podcast we just listened to, he basically said the opposite. I mean, he tries to pretend he doesn't have any feelings, but he knows that Nick really doesn't like him, and he platformed it. He was taking a big gamble by putting somebody that didn't like him up on the thing. You know enough, so you know that you have an issue with him having an issue with you.
It's kind of weird.
Pretty uptight about it a lot. So
wait, listen.
So how about you?
I don't know.
It's kind of weird.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. You think I have an issue with you, despite the fact that I've talked about you multiple times and subtweeted you and things like. Despite that,
so I don't know.
So what leads you to that conclusion?
Probably like the 4 tweets about the Michelin Man that you didn't know it was like made out of tires, so you thought it was soft.
When you meme stuff, you according to your interpretation.
You think I'm actually embarrassed? He's replying to somebody about the whole Michelin Man meme. Oh, he's spurging again. Or no, so he's replying about something else. And he said, oh, look, he's spurging again. And he said, oof, you had to call over the Michelin Man. He directly called him the Michelin Man. The Michelin Man tweets were about Nick, and he confirms it here. He was subtweeting him multiple times.
You are doing it because you're tight with a person?
Yeah, I typically don't like a lot of the people I make videos on. That's why I say mean things to them online.
All right. Well, I guess we differ in that sense.
And that made zero sense because he basically he doesn't seem to understand what was actually being talked about there. Listen to that. Like I didn't want to play it again, but anyway, Def Noodles. If you listen to that back, yeah, I'm gonna post a link to Nick's video in the chat, so you can go watch it later if you want. But yeah, like he doesn't even understand what Nick just said. Yeah, I typically don't like the people that I make insults towards. Huh, that's interesting. I guess we differ that way. So you like the people that you insult? You like James Charles and all that? Weird.
Sure. I guess I kind of just wanted to ask you if you're like, are you self-aware in this? Do you kind of understand why people think you're a little crazy?
Look, I've been talking to people for how long this has been going, but I'm listening.
I almost feel bad for you because a lot of these
whether or not people
have been insane.
Crazy, like you mean like mental institution crazy?
No, but people just think that you're
crazy,
like a rocker recently.
Like how crazy? Like what do you mean?
I mean, like just off your rocker recently, not like fucking put this guy in a cage. He's gonna hurt somebody. Crazy.
Yeah, Keemstar's his best friend.
Well, I'm off my rocker.
Because I feel.
And you notice how every little thing that Nick says, he's like, well, explain that. Explain that, but he didn't do that to anybody else. This is a passive-aggressive thing that has become very clear that Def Noodles likes to do. When he doesn't really know what to say to somebody, he'll just constantly do this, try and get them to, like, over-explain things and try and find a semantic argument within it.
We've been looping for, like, the past year or so. I feel like the same critiques that I've made in, I don't know, like, fucking December of 2020, was that? Are like the same ones that you're hearing now. It's the same thing.
What do you think? Like, I mean, I pretty much outlined everything I did before you even made, I think, your videos. I don't remember specifically when you published them, but I remember end of 2019, it was before a lot of people on.
The podcast was released in 2021 after all of the drama happened. So it was at the very earliest that it was recorded, the end of 2020, which means they sat on the podcast for like 4 or 5 months beforehand. However, in that podcast, you talked about the death of Rush Limbaugh and how Augie praised him when he died. Death date: February of 2021. So it was at least March of 2021, most likely, given that you were referencing weeks ago when somebody had praised, and Augie being the only one in the commentary community, as far as I'm aware, to have praised Rush Limbaugh. You were talking about Augie.
On commentary, started making videos. I did an interview
with John
where I
Swan,
literally
right?
talked about the same things.
Oh, you're talking about the Vulture one, right?
This actually circles back to a point that was made hours ago, which is, to what extent do people want to accept what I do or place what they want it to be on it?
Okay, yeah, but Dennis, I watched. I'm the only one on the call who's listened to your Vulture interview. I'm the only one here who has.
Okay.
Have you ever seen my videos on you?
No, actually I haven't.
Okay, because I covered this in the second one. I have a quote from the guy that you talked to, from the Vulture. Is Jesse David Fox.
Yeah.
Okay.
So explain about it.
All right. So this is the.
Now I'm gonna skip this because he plays the clip from my video that I already played.
It's not always clear which part is real and which part is a joke, and even what the joke even is sometimes. As much as he says it's just a character, I don't know if I always believe him. He clearly gets something out of reporting in this world, and even after talking to Dennis, my producers and I were unsure which parts were real and which parts weren't.
So you're saying that this is like the biggest comedy podcast. I heard you say that earlier. And even they don't understand your gimmick. So, I mean, at what point do you kind of go insanity?
I mean, that's fair to say about Colbert too. People thought Colbert was 100% real when he was doing his shit.
Yeah, but there are people who also think Colbert is like funny.
You're getting right now. You're getting like a summary of what he said. And if you go through, he actually asks me that. He asks me. He said, "Are you serious?
This is
Are
his
you
post-interview summary."
Exactly.
So he doesn't believe you.
By the way, I Googled top comedy podcasts because I only heard of this podcast because of Def Noodle's interview. And it's not... I don't know where to get an actual list. I don't know where he gets that it's the top in the top comedy podcasts. But it's not on this list of top... It's not on this top 10 list. 15 best comedy podcasts. My dad wrote a porno. Who's that one? That one sounds like it might actually be funny. I'll have to look into that one later. Mark Maron, How'd This Get Made, Smart Less, Hidden Mickeys, Trash Divorces, Very Fatal Murder, No Such Thing as Fish, Beach of Sandy Wet, Athletic Minutes, Queers Gone By, Women Like Us, Adam Buxton Podcast, The Fake Doctors, Real Friends. It's like, I've never even heard of most of these. This one I've heard of. This one's the guys from Scrubs. Esquire. Nobody Panic. Wheel of Misfortune. The Office Deep Dive with Brian Baumgartner. Proper Class. Storytime with Seth Rogen. Poppy Hillstead. Let's see. Off Menu. Walker Switch. Football Book all look together. Good one. Okay, so here's one that mentions it. Podcast about jokes goes extremely deep on a particular gag and a comedian's over. Dissecting and talking about how one gag in particular started out life. How it got kicked into shape and how it was delivered. So this podcast is about breaking down jokes. They spent the time breaking down the joke and they couldn't figure it out. They weren't even sure they were understanding it. This isn't even a list in sequential order. So all we know is this one is, according to Esquire, one of the 32 best. And the guy couldn't quite understand what was going on in the interview. He just kind of takes his word for it. And what's funny is I'm actually not seeing any of the comedy podcasts I'm aware of that actually are considered top podcasts that are actually on this list. A lot of these podcasts that are here are top-level podcasts that are not listed in these podcasts because these are curations. I wish this was actually sequential and listed where what the metrics were based on or something, but there's not.
He's teasing his interview with that summary, right? I mean,
He's teasing the interview with the summary. He's being sarcastic. But the podcast wasn't about joking. It was about breaking down the joke, and he was like siding with you.
The context of everything I explained isn't presented there because otherwise you wouldn't listen to the podcast. But I explain it very clearly from A to Z, how I arrived at the concept of the channel, how it evolved, and what is real and what isn't. And that's fine. That was his conclusion. That seems to be the conclusion.
See, he just said he was teasing the podcast. He was teasing the podcast. That wasn't his actual feelings. It's fine that was his conclusion. So was he kidding or was he serious, Def Noodles? You're rationalizing again. You're justifying again. Your hubris is showing. Zip up, your hubris is showing.
Conclusion that a lot of people arrive at, that's totally fine. The intention is still the same. Now,
but it's not just a lot of people that arrive there, Dennis.
Now,
there are people who are like ontologically like they're like opposed to each other. If I'm agreeing with somebody on the H3H3 subreddit and Adam McIntyre and Cat Tenbarge, people who are completely different than me that I disagree with almost everything else they say, there's like a large sample size of people who have this issue with you.
Like, what do you want me to do?
I want you to realize that you're the problem, not...
This is what we've been trying to tell him. He is the problem. His sheep followers also can't really tell. They think they can tell what the joke is, but they also believe what he says. But when we point out the problems, they don't understand. Oh, I don't understand. What do you mean? But he thinks that they're following him and understanding in meta form.
Everyone else around you.
So when did I say that everybody else was a problem? I mean, then I'm the problem.
That's
what
fine. The hope on the stream is. It's like, everyone just doesn't get my jokes. You've been doing the same bit since 2020. If the joke was that everybody else is stupid and I'm the funniest comedian that's ever lived, you know what? Let's start a frenemies and I'll hand you an award right now. I think we'd be great together, but I don't think that's true.
I never said I was the funniest comedian that's ever lived. All I did was say that I wanted to tell jokes every day, and that the news made it easy because there's news happening all the time.
Well, then stop throwing labels on people. It's pretty much that easy. You could just stop trying to grandstand.
So, here's the thing.
And you talk about news, but real news.
I think my intentions are. Like I said earlier, I created a Dilbert sketch. If people want a Dilbert comic strip, if people want to see it as Hemingway and expect it to be Hemingway, then that's on them. That's my problem for creating the Dilbert comic strip and only being talented enough to create a Dilbert comic strip. I wish I was Hemingway or F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Here's the problem, Dennis. He's actually making a good argument for us. He doesn't realize how bad his argument here is. If people think I'm making a Hemingway, that's on them. So when you make an allegation, you're Dilbert, and someone thinks it's Hemingway, that's not your fault for putting out misinformation. That's their fault for not getting the joke. This is the problem with Dennis. He doesn't even understand his own jokes well enough to articulate them.
But I'm not. So this is what I'm giving people, and this is what it is. I mean, people are legitimately asking me to be something that I'm not. This is my authentic self, my ideas, and I don't know how else to be something else.
All right, well, we're not going to agree on this one. Want to move on to the next point?
Hold on 1 second. Here's the thing. If you don't like what he does or what he says, you can block him, mute him,
If you don't like what he does, falsely accusing people, you can just block him, mute him, and ignore him. Def Noodle's content is him complaining about people and talking about people, just like the rest of the commentary community. He could also just block and mute and ignore. I mean, heck, he did it to everybody before. He blocked everybody in the commentary community before because he didn't want to hear criticism. But he's allowed to be critical. We're not.
Don't watch him and stop complaining about it.
Preach. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yes, I know. Sometimes he says things that are way too inflammatory. Like that still reaches out.
I don't care if things are inflammatory. I don't agree with everyone who got on the stream tonight and said that your joke was too mean. I don't think that you can condemn him for calling Papa Gut somebody who looks like a pedophile just based off of that one comment. I totally disagree with the allegedly Angelo guy. I think that he sounds the way that Def Noodles thinks Papa Gut looks. So I'm not condemning Dennis for that.
Here's the thing. I disagree with Nick to an extent here. I agree that if he would have just made a joke about Papa Gut looking like a pedo once, right? And that would have been fine and just whatever. He makes a joke about him looking like a pedo, and that's it. But the problem is, as Nick is about to lay out, it goes deeper than that. Which is why I think all of those subsequent pedo jokes are piled on top of the first and most important information.
I'm not condemning Dennis for any edgy jokes. My problem with Dennis is that the joke, quote unquote, that he made isn't just, like a pedophile. I'll read it to you. Motherfucker got famous on TikTok for quote unquote joking about fucking 14-year-old girls. Then he got offended that
Did he, though?
about him.
So
is that
And they're justifying it in the call.
how he got famous?
That he was serious and wanted to fuck children.
So here's the thing.
I'm done tech the FBI.
We covered this before, but I'm happy to walk through it again.
Sure.
So, is fucking children funny to you?
Could be in certain circumstances.
That is such a bad faith argument because his joke was directed at his joke was calling someone a pedophile. This person actually had an allegation against them that, according to Papa Gut, seemed valid. He was an alleged pedophile. An alleged statutory rapist. So, by that logic, Def Noodles played the same card to Papa Gut, and he's mad that Papa Gut made the joke to begin with.
Stances of a joke, absolutely.
But he tries to reframe it to make Papa Gut sound like he was making a joke about a victim.
But I'm happy to walk through it again.
Sure.
So, is fucking children funny to you?
Could be in certain circumstances of a joke, absolutely.
Is screwing kids funny to you? It could be, depending on the circumstances of the joke. Very well put, because that's the point, the nuance. Thank you for the follow, Star-Lord.
Okay, so talking about a grown man from the point of view of a grown man fucking a 14-year-old child is objectively funny to you.
That is not what he said in any way, shape, or form. Why Def Noodles feels that it has to be objectively funny all of a sudden doesn't make any sense to me. The word objective came out of nowhere.
Depends on the context of the joke. Absolutely.
So tell me a context where it would be funny.
I think that it's funny that you made a joke about Papa Gut fucking children because it makes you look like an idiot.
Okay, so
that's a good one. And I think it was on Dead on Dave stream earlier. Somebody mentioned one of my favorite clips of all time. Bobby Lee, Fighter and the Kid, FTK, here it is. Here's a really good example.
Set the whole scenario.
Well, when I was in high school, when I was 9, I got molested by a guy with Down syndrome.
Don't laugh, Brandon.
I'm not laughing.
Why'd you laugh?
The framing of that is ridiculous, okay? That's what's mildly funny there, is like, he was sexually assaulted by a guy that doesn't know better. Oh, that's a shame. But wait, how on earth did he let a guy that didn't know better on? How did he let this guy... Why did he let the guy go through it? Like, he couldn't outrun him or do anything? Nothing? So, it's mildly funny. But that's not really what the joke is. This is the setup to a joke.
It's just...
That's fucking rude.
It's such a curveball.
I know. Can I just say something? I'm gonna say it again, and if you smile, I'm gonna leave.
Okay. But
no,
hold
I'm
on.
being real. If you smile,
all right. Hold on.
That really fucking broke me.
No.
All right. Hold on.
All right, so
Give me a
second. I swear to fucking God, dude.
I know.
Give me
I
a
will
second.
leave, Chin Chin.
All right. Hold on.
You can't make a joke in
That's his name.
All right, but
that's not his name.
Yeah.
What's your name again?
Chin
Chin.
All right. Give me a second. Give me a second.
All right.
I just wasn't ready for that.
I understand. I'm gonna say it again, and if you smile, I'm gonna leave.
Well, don't. All right. Hold on.
We can't threaten a smile.
All right. Just hold on. No, because then you're gonna laugh. Don't laugh. Seriously.
Don't laugh. Get serious. He's opening up here.
You ready? Don't cover your mouth though either.
Hey!
You can't cover your mouth. Because the thing is that I'm telling you.
He's using this experience of his to make these guys uncomfortable. That's the bit, right? But he escalates it.
Something that's like I'm vulnerable about it, and I'm expressing a truth to you.
Hey, dude, you gotta get serious.
And if you cover your mouth, I just feel like you're laughing.
Nope, let's do it.
All right. So when I was 9, I was brutally molested by a guy.
You can't say brutally.
Why?
Because that's a curveball.
Why is that?
Don't say brutally. And look at Chin now.
It's not a curveball.
Don't say brutally.
You didn't add some.
All right, don't add
adjectives there.
So when I was 9 years old, every day for a summer,
So the joke is that he starts at this one point and he just continuously adds to it, making it more grandiose. He keeps making it more ridiculous and more hard to believe. But there's at least an element of truth there. He's talked about it before. I can't remember exactly how much of it is true and all that. But like, he took something that he actually experienced and he started building on it and made it. But that's a context that's actually funny. He turned something that can be very funny. Nothing is objectively funny. So why Def Noodles feels like he needs to all of a sudden make it about it being objective? That's spin. He's trying to play a semantic game to get some kind of an own where one doesn't exist.
First off, I didn't say he fucks children. I said
no. You said that he was quote unquote joking. The implication is that he wasn't joking when he made a comment about fucking a 14-year-old girl.
So his joke. We're talking about the quote unquote joke part, which is what you brought out.
Yes, that's.
You're clearly not getting it, dude.
His joke was, if she bleeds, she breeds. Shout out to Andres Lopez for the life tip or some shit like that.
And your implication is that he wasn't joking about that he actually wants to fuck children if they bleed.
Okay, so essentially the joke is, thank you for teaching me that I should fuck children, Andres Lopez. So now my question to you is, objective.
The joke being about the guy being the predator.
Is fucking children funny to you from you?
Def Noodles is trying to grandstand about about Papa Gut's joke about somebody having sex with a minor by repeatedly making a joke about Papa Gut having sex with minors. Def Noodles is the most dishonest, hypocritical piece of trash in this community that I've ever seen. I don't feel like we need to continue this video anymore anyway.
Better take a dive cause I'm always all in. Ready for the night cause I'm always on it. Always on it, always on it, always on it. You're leaving this in the hearse. Your bald head forever be cursed. You snitch like a fed, you get burst. On Twitter, another outburst. You told them you jumped and you suck. Rip, you'll do anything for a buck. Fake, everyone knows you're a cock. You got a micro when you talk.